Chosen ones, stop for a moment and listen with your full attention. What I am about to share is not light, casual, or meant for every ear. This word is for those who have walked through unusual resistance, for those who have felt the weight of delay, and for those who know deep down that their life has never unfolded in an ordinary way. If your spirit is unsettled by truth, this may not be for you. But if something inside you feels steady enough to stay, then hear this with clarity. God has allowed this message to meet you at a very exact moment, and there is purpose in that timing. There is a woman being prepared, sent not to confuse your path, but to bring restoration into places where life has been painfully empty. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You have not been denied because you were forgotten. You have not been delayed because heaven lost track of your name. What you have experienced was never random. It only felt random because you were living through it in real time, carrying questions you could not answer yet. When you are one of God's chosen ones, your life rarely moves in straight lines. It often moves through pressure, pauses, endings, and strange detours that make little sense while you are inside them. You watch other people receive things easily, and for a while you wonder whether something is wrong with you. You wonder why love comes to others with less struggle, why support seems to gather around people who carry less depth, why doors open for those who appear careless while you remain in training and waiting in silence. But chosen ones are not handled casually. That is the part many people never understand. Your path is different because what you carry is different. There is spiritual weight on your life. There is consequence attached to your decisions. There is influence hidden inside your obedience. And because of that, you are not rushed into things that would damage your future. God does not hand sacred assignments to an untested foundation. He allows pressure to reveal what is stable in you. He allows denial to expose whether you still know who you are when something is withheld. He allows silence to show whether your faith survives when comfort disappears. That is why your story feels heavy at times. Not because God enjoys your struggle, but because He is preparing you to carry what lesser versions of yourself could not hold. Many of you listening have gone through seasons where life felt unfair in a very personal way. You gave honesty and received suspicion. You gave loyalty and were answered with betrayal. You gave patience and were met with delay. You gave love and felt as though it vanished into empty space. Over time, that kind of pattern can make a person question everything. It can make you feel singled out. It can make you wonder whether your prayers are being heard at all. Yet even in those moments, a deeper process was happening. Denial was teaching you what applause never could. When love was withheld, you learned discernment. When support was missing, you learned how to stand with God when no one else understood your path. When comfort disappeared, you discovered a strength you would never have developed through an easy life. When validation never came, you were forced to stop building your identity around other people's recognition. That kind of shaping is not glamorous. It is quiet. It happens in private. It happens while you are trying to hold yourself together and still show up with dignity. This is why chosen ones often seem mature long before they ever wanted to be. Life required something from you early. It asked you to understand pain before you understood ease. It asked you to manage disappointment before you had enough language to explain what you were feeling. It asked you to survive spaces where your spirit knew it did not belong. That does something to a person. It makes you observant. It makes you careful. It makes you feel older inside than your years would suggest. And for a long time, you may have mistaken that heaviness for a flaw. But it was not a flaw. It was preparation. There are things God will not let you receive while you still confuse attention for love, urgency, for purpose or intensity, for truth. So He lets certain doors remain closed, not to deprive you, but to protect you from stepping into them as the wrong version of yourself. There were relationships you cried over that would have weakened your discernment. There were opportunities you begged for that would have fed your ego but starved your calling. There were people you would have followed simply because you were tired of being alone. God saw all of it. He saw what your emotions could not yet sort through. He saw how easily your gift could have been misplaced if you had received too much too soon. That is why denial must be reinterpreted. It was never simple rejection. It was often divine filtration. It was heaven keeping certain things from entering your life before your spirit was strong enough to hold boundaries, clarity, and peace at the same time. Chosen ones are often denied because they are being watched closely, not in a threatening way, but in a refining way. Your reactions matter. Your private obedience matters. The way you carry disappointment matters. The way you speak when no one rewards you matters. These are not small things in the spirit. They are evidence of readiness. And while all of this was happening, another difficult truth was unfolding. Your presence often stirred people without you trying to do anything at all. You triggered insecurity in people who had not healed. You exposed hidden motives just by remaining sincere. You made shallow environments uncomfortable because your spirit was built for depth. So people projected onto you. They misunderstood you. They quietly resisted you. They withheld kindness. They withheld fairness. They even withheld celebration when you deserved it. Not always because they hated you, but because what you carried unsettled what they had been avoiding in themselves. That is why so much of your pain has felt relational. It was not only about losing things, it was about being denied softness in places where you needed it most. It was about learning to function while emotionally underfed. It was about staying faithful while being misread. It was about carrying a clean heart through environments that rewarded performance more than integrity. And still, somehow you kept going. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe not without tears. Maybe not without confusion. But you kept going. That matters more than you realize. Because what denial has created in you is not emptiness. It has created depth. You do not panic the way you used to. You do not chase explanations the way you once did. You are beginning to understand that peace is more valuable than proof. You are learning that silence can be protection. You are learning that not every closed door is a loss. Some are mercies in disguise. Some are quiet rescues. Some are God's way of saying, not yet, because I need you clearer, steadier, and less dependent before what belongs to you can arrive safely. And this is where your spirit can begin to breathe. You are not behind. You are not cursed. You are not unloved by heaven. You have been in training. Painful training at times, yes, but purposeful training. Every lonely season, every withheld answer, every moment where you felt overlooked was shaping your posture for restoration. Not just any restoration, but the kind that does not become an idol when it arrives. The kind you can recognize without clinging. The kind that adds peace instead of stealing it. So as this journey continues, let this truth settle deeply in you now. What was denied had a reason. What was delayed had a purpose. And what is coming next will make sense only because of what you survived first. The story is not that God forgot you. The story is that He trusted you enough to shape you slowly. And that slow shaping is the very reason you are becoming ready for what heaven has already set in motion. The path you have walked has often felt quieter than it should have. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind of quiet that makes a person search for meaning in the middle of unanswered questions. You know that kind of silence well. It is the silence of being surrounded and still not understood. It is the silence of carrying pain you cannot fully explain because most people would only hear the surface of it. It is the silence of having to grow in places where no one clapped for your progress, no one noticed your restraint, and no one realized how much strength it took for you to remain soft when life kept giving you reasons to harden. This is where many chosen ones begin to understand that their loneliness was never ordinary. It was part of the shaping. You have walked alone in ways that others may never fully see. Not always physically alone, because sometimes the deepest loneliness happens in the presence of people. Sometimes it happens inside relationships where your spirit is unseen. Sometimes it happens in families where your role was to carry more than your share. Sometimes it happens in friendships where you were the one who listened, held held space stayed loyal and still somehow ended up feeling emotionally untouched. Chosen ones often experience this kind of separation early. You learn quickly that being around people does not guarantee being safe with them. You learn that closeness and understanding are not the same thing. You learn that many people enjoy access to your heart without having the capacity to honor it. That realization is painful, but it is also sacred because it becomes the beginning of discernment. Discernment is not suspicion. It is not cynicism. It is not living with your heart shut. Discernment is the ability to feel the difference between what is emotionally loud and what is spiritually true. And most chosen ones only develop that difference through disappointment. That is why your path has included so many seasons where what you wanted most was companionship, yet what you were given was distance. God was not mocking your need. He was sharpening your awareness. He was teaching you that not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. And not everyone who stays is meant to lead you. There were times when you begged for one person to truly understand you. Just one person to meet your heart without trying to control it. Just one person to stay consistent. Just one person to make you feel as though you did not have to carry your whole life by yourself. But instead of that, many of you were given lessons wrapped in people who could only meet fragments of you. They liked your kindness, but not your depth. They liked your support, but not your boundaries. They liked your calm until it exposed their chaos. They liked your loyalty until it stopped tolerating disrespect. So again and again you were left learning that being chosen by God often means being misread by people. That misunderstanding can do strange things to the soul if you are not careful. It can tempt you to shrink yourself so you are easier to hold. It can tempt you to speak less deeply, feel less openly, expect less honestly. It can make you think that if you become more convenient, more agreeable, more digestible, then maybe people will stay. But chosen ones are not built for self-erasure. Every time you tried to make yourself smaller to preserve connection, your spirit felt the cost. Every time you denied your own intuition to keep peace, something inside you became tired. Every time you ignored what God was showing you because you did not want another ending, you lost a little clarity. And eventually the loneliness taught you something important. It taught you that temporary company is too expensive when it costs you alignment. This is why so much of your journey has been about separation. Separation from places that drained you. Separation from people who only loved the version of you that lacked boundaries. Separation from systems that wanted your labor but not your light. Separation from emotional environments where your nervous system never had permission to rest. And even though these separations hurt, they were not random removals. They were divine edits. God was not simply taking people away. He was removing noise so you could hear him more clearly. He was clearing emotional clutter so your inner life could become stronger than your need for external reassurance. Isolation, when seen through the eyes of the flesh, feels like punishment, but through the spirit, it is often training. In isolation, you begin hearing what you drowned out before. You start noticing how much of your energy once went into managing other people's moods, interpreting mixed signals, and protecting connections that never protected you back. You realize how much of your emotional life had been spent anticipating disappointment. And once that pattern becomes clear, you cannot unknow it. You begin to reclaim yourself. Slowly, sometimes painfully, but truly, you also begin to understand why God sometimes allows you to walk through long seasons without the comfort you prayed for. If comfort had come too early, you might never have developed spiritual backbone. You might have stayed dependent on external peace instead of developing inner steadiness. You might have kept confusing affection with alignment. But when you are made to stand in hard seasons with little reinforcement, something else grows in you. You begin to recognize your own center. You begin to feel the quiet dignity of being able to stand alone without collapsing inward. You begin to trust that even when no one checks on you, God still sees the full weight of what you are carrying. That kind of solitude matures a person. It teaches you how to pray when you are not being rescued quickly. It teaches you how to hold yourself with grace when life is not giving you visible proof that things are changing. It teaches you how to stay kind without becoming naive. It teaches you how to remain open without becoming available to everything. And these are not small lessons. These are the exact lessons that protect chosen ones from entering their next season with old patterns still attached. Many of you know what it is to be emotionally denied the most. That is where the ache has lived. You gave genuine love and got inconsistency back. You offered truth and got defensiveness. You remained loyal and got distance. You kept your heart sincere and still ended up being treated as though your goodness made you easy to overlook. Over time, that can make a person wonder whether love is only given fully to others. It can make you question whether ease is reserved for people who are less aware, less intense, less spiritually burdened. But hear me clearly. You were not denied because you were too much. You were denied because what you carry requires a different kind of handling. Chosen ones often come into the world with a heart that feels old, perceptive, and deeply responsive. You feel what is off long before anyone says it out loud. You notice energy shifts. You hear what people mean even when they say something else. You sense when connection is clean and when it is contaminated by ego fear or hidden motives. That sensitivity is a gift, but early in life it can feel like a burden because you do not yet know how to hold it without becoming overwhelmed. So loneliness becomes part of the training. It teaches you how to separate what you feel from who you are. It teaches you not to drown in what you perceive. It teaches you to bring your awareness back to God, rather than letting it scatter into everyone else's instability. There is another reason chosen ones walk alone for a season. God needs to know that your faith is real even when no one is reinforcing it. Anyone can feel spiritual when life is rewarding them. Anyone can feel secure when love is being handed to them consistently. But what do you become when the room is empty? The answer is delayed, and you still choose integrity. What do you become when your heart is tired, yet you do not turn cruel? What do you become when you are lonely, yet you refuse counterfeit comfort? That is where spiritual maturity is formed. Not in the loud moments, in the hidden ones. And while you were in those hidden moments, you were learning how not to idolize human presence. This matters more than many people realize. If your peace depends completely on who stays, then fear will govern your relationships. You will cling where you should observe. You will overgive where you should pause. You will accept confusion because the alternative feels like emptiness. But isolation breaks that pattern slowly. It teaches you that emptiness is survivable. It teaches you that God's presence is not a poetic idea, but a lived reality. It teaches you that your life does not collapse simply because a person leaves. Once you know that deeply, your relationships begin to change. You no longer beg to be chosen where you are only being tolerated. And this is why, even though your path has been lonely, it has not been wasted. Every season of walking alone has been shaping the way you will one day walk beside the right person. Not from desperation, not from fear, not from the old ache that wanted someone to save you from yourself, but from maturity, from peace, from the kind of inner stability that does not vanish the moment life becomes uncertain. God has been teaching you how to stay whole before He brings you into sacred companionship. Because companionship without wholeness becomes dependency, but companionship after refinement becomes alignment. So let yourself understand this without bitterness. The seasons of being misunderstood were not proof that you were unworthy of connection. They were proof that shallow connection could not satisfy what God was building in you. The seasons of being alone were not heaven's silence against you. They were heaven's protection over you. The emotional deprivation, the strange distance, the long nights of trying to make sense of why your life felt so separate from others, all of it was leading somewhere. All of it was teaching your spirit how to distinguish noise from truth, attention from love, and presence from peace. And now, you stand in a different kind of awareness, not because all the pain is gone, but because you are beginning to understand its role. You are beginning to see that loneliness was never meant to define you. It was meant to refine you. It was never the final chapter. It was the training ground where your discernment was sharpened, your dependence on God deepened, and your spirit prepared to recognize the kind of connection that does not take from your soul but honors it. That is why the walking alone had to happen first. Because only the soul that has learned how to stand with God in solitude can truly recognize what peace feels like when heaven finally sends it near. By the time heaven begins to introduce this next part of your story, something inside you has already changed. You are no longer asking for just any connection to break the silence. You are no longer asking for attention to soothe an ache. You are no longer trying to turn every kind interaction into a sign. The path behind you has already trained you too deeply for that. You have learned what emotional hunger feels like. You have learned how easily loneliness can make people reach for what was never meant to hold them. And because you have learned that, you are now able to hear this next truth with more maturity. The woman heaven assigns to your life is not sent as an escape. She is sent as alignment. This is where many chosen ones have to slow down and breathe, because the subject of a woman sent by God can easily become distorted by fantasy projection and desperation. But this message is not meant to feed illusion. It is meant to steady your spirit in truth. God does not send people to intensify confusion. He does not send people to become distractions dressed as blessings. He does not send people to make you emotionally addicted while calling it destiny. What he sends carries clarity. What he sends carries peace. What he sends is not designed to consume your inner life, but to fit into it with order, dignity, and spiritual purpose. So when we speak of this woman, we are not speaking of someone your loneliness invented. We are not speaking of someone your pain designed as a reward. We are speaking of a real person prepared by God, shaped through her own process, carrying a role that matches your season. That is why this cannot be reduced to romantic imagination. Some of you hear this and immediately picture a partner. And yes, for some her role will include that. But for others, her role may come in a different form. She may be a guide. She may be a helper. She may be a person whose presence opens a door you have been staring at for years. She may be someone who restores your trust in what peace feels like. She may be a bridge into an environment that finally matches your calling. Heaven is not limited to one form, and you must not limit God because your emotions prefer a single image. The first thing you must understand is that divine assignment is never random. God is not improvising with your life. He does not accidentally allow certain souls to cross your path. Even what looks ordinary on the outside often carries deep intention underneath. That is why timing matters so much. This woman does not arrive because your desire reached a certain level. She does not appear just because you have suffered enough and think you have earned relief. She appears when alignment, readiness, and purpose converge. God moves by order. He moves by preparation. He moves by the condition of your spirit, not merely by the intensity of your longing. Chosen ones often walk through long seasons where the imagination becomes loud. When you have lived with enough delay, the mind naturally starts creating images of what restoration might look like. You think about what peace would feel like if the right person finally appeared. You imagine what it would mean to be understood. You imagine how different life could feel if one soul entered it and brought gentleness where there has only been strain. But imagination is not the same as revelation. God does not build your future around emotional daydreaming. He builds it around obedience. That is why so many chosen ones have to unlearn the habit of trying to predict what heaven is doing instead of simply preparing for it. This woman is not a prize for your suffering. She is not a consolation gift because the past was hard. She is not sent to flatter your wounds. She is sent because something in your life now has room for what was not possible before. That is why her arrival is tied to your stability. She comes not when you are desperate for anyone, but when you are grounded enough to receive the right one without worshipping the connection. She comes when your inner life is less chaotic. She comes when you no longer need a person to tell you who you are. She comes when you can stand on your own feet, speak with honesty, and and remain whole, whether she stays near or steps back. That is a very important truth, because many chosen ones have spent years confusing need with readiness. Need says, I cannot keep carrying this alone, send someone now. Readiness says, I have learned how to carry myself with God. And now, if heaven sends someone, I can receive them cleanly. Need reaches from emptiness. Readiness receives from peace. Need clings. Readiness discerns. And God will always protect sacred connections from being placed into hands that still confuse possession with purpose. This is also why divine connections usually arrive more quietly than people expect. They do not always come with fireworks, instant certainty, or dramatic spiritual spectacle. God is rarely theatrical in the way human fantasy wants him to be. His precision often comes wrapped in calm. This woman may enter your life in a way that seems ordinary at first. There may be no grand sign that announces her role on the first day. There may simply be a quiet steadiness, a calm presence, a kind of spiritual cleanliness that your heart notices before your mind knows how to describe it. The reason many people miss what is divine is because they were trained to only recognize what is dramatic. But chosen ones must learn a better language than drama. You must learn the language of peace. And this woman speaks that language. Her presence does not make your spirit scramble. It does not make you feel the urge to perform, impress, or secure something before it disappears. It does not activate your fear the way old connections did. Instead, it settles you. It creates room in your nervous system. It does not leave you wondering what she meant, whether she is hiding something, or how quickly you must respond before the connection fades. It creates steadiness. And steadiness can feel unfamiliar to those who are trained in emotional turbulence. But unfamiliar does not mean wrong. In many cases, unfamiliar is exactly how healing first feels. This woman also carries self-awareness. That matters because self-aware people do not create chaos simply to feel alive. They do not pull others into confusion to test their value. They do not depend on emotional games to maintain closeness. She has her own depth, her own history, her own lessons, and because of that, she does not need to drain your spirit to confirm her place in your life. She knows who she is. She knows what peace costs. She knows how important timing is. That is why she does not rush you. She does not invade your process. She does not interpret your healing as rejection. She understands that real connections grow through truth, respect, and patience, not pressure. Now hear this carefully. Divine does not mean flawless. If you are expecting perfection, you will miss what is real. God sends people not polished fantasies. This woman will have edges, opinions, strength, and boundaries. She may challenge you. She may reveal parts of you that still need growth. But the challenge will not feel like chaos. It will feel like refinement. It will not tear down your peace. It will sharpen it. That is the difference. Counterfeit connections create instability and then call it passion. Divine connections create honesty and then make room for growth. Another important truth is this: she does not come to compete with you. Chosen ones have often been surrounded by people who are quietly threatened by their light, their depth, or their calling. You know what it is to feel others resist you without saying why. You know what it is to sense subtle envy under the surface of support. This woman is different. She does not see your calling as something to control, dim, or rival. She understands how to stand beside strength without insecurity. She does not need to outshine you to feel worthy. She does not need to be the center of everything to feel seen. That makes her presence safe in a way that your spirit may not be used to. And because she is sent by God, her role always connects back to purpose. She is not there to pull you away from disciplined prayer or inner order. She does not encourage you to become less honest, less grounded, or less obedient. She strengthens what God has already been building. That is how you can begin to discern the source of a connection. If being around someone makes you more compromised, more scattered, more emotionally unstable, that is not alignment. But if being around someone leaves you more grounded, more clear, more sincere with yourself, then pay attention. God confirms through fruit, not fantasy. This woman too has been prepared. She has not been drifting carelessly through life waiting to become your answer. She has her own process, her own silence, her own seasons of denial, her own conversations with God. That is why there is recognition when your paths cross. Not obsession, recognition. Pain recognizes pain. Maturity recognizes maturity. Integrity recognizes integrity. There is something familiar but not chaotic. Something meaningful but not consuming. Something that feels ordered even if you cannot explain it all at once. And this is where your spirit must remain humble. You are not called to scan every face looking for her. You are not meant to obsess over every interaction and ask whether this is the one God sent. That kind of anxious searching only creates noise. Your responsibility is simpler and deeper than that. Stay aligned, stay honest, stay healed, stay obedient in the quiet areas of your life. Recognition flows naturally when you are grounded. The more centered you become, the less likely you are to mistake counterfeit attention for divine assignment. So let this settle into you now. The woman heaven assigns is not built out of your longing. She is formed through God's wisdom. She is sent through timing you cannot force. She enters your story not as emotional entertainment, but as part of a larger restoration that has been unfolding beneath the surface for longer than you realize. She is not here to become your idol. She is here to reflect the order, gentleness, and precision of a God who never forgot what you were denied and never lost sight of what your healing was preparing you to receive. When this woman enters your life in the way God intends, her presence does not simply add another connection to your story. It begins restoring places inside you that have been living under quiet strain for years. This is why it is so important not to reduce her role to surface ideas. She is not significant just because she arrives. She is significant because of what her presence begins to heal without forcing it, without announcing it, and without making your restoration feel like a performance. Some people bring noise, some bring pressure, some bring temporary excitement, but the one sent by God brings restoration that reaches into the areas denial shaped most deeply. The first thing many chosen ones begin to notice is emotional safety. That may sound simple, but for you it is not small at all. Emotional safety is often the very thing life withheld from you the longest. You learned early how to stay alert. You learned how to read a room before speaking. You learned how to measure tone, monitor shifts, and brace yourself for disappointment before it arrived. You learned how to keep your words careful because you never knew when honesty would be punished or misunderstood. Over time, this kind of living trains the body to stay prepared instead of relaxed. It teaches the heart to love with caution. It teaches the nervous system to survive, but not to rest. And then around this woman, something unfamiliar begins to happen. You notice that your shoulders do not stay lifted. Your mind is not racing to interpret every silence. Your heart is not rehearsing what might go wrong next. You do not feel the need to calculate how much of yourself is safe to reveal. There is no hidden punishment behind kindness. There is no sudden withdrawal waiting behind warmth. You are not trying to predict whether peace will vanish if you make one imperfect move. Instead, your system begins to settle. Not all at once, not in some dramatic instant, but gradually, like a room finally growing quiet after years of noise. That quiet is restoration. This woman also restores love without manipulation. That matters because many chosen ones have not truly experienced steady love. They experienced conditional affection, selective warmth, or attention that was generous only when they were useful, agreeable, or easy to manage. You may have learned to earn love rather than receive it. You may have learned that your value increased when you overgave, stayed quiet, made fewer demands, or carried more than was yours. That is not love. That is training in self-abandonment. And many chosen ones are so accustomed to that pattern that when real love appears, they do not know what to do with it at first. Because real love does not make you perform. It does not reward you for shrinking. It does not create insecurity and then call your anxiety devotion. This woman does not love strategically. She does not withhold warmth to regain power. She does not go cold to test whether you will chase. She does not make affection feel like a prize you must win by proving your loyalty over and over again. Instead, love becomes steady. It becomes clean. It becomes something that can be trusted slowly. And that steadiness begins to repair places in you that had accepted emotional instability as normal. She also restores support without competition. This is one of the quiet wounds many chosen ones carry. You have often been around people who smiled at you while secretly measuring themselves against you. You have been around people who applauded publicly and compared privately. You have been around those who wanted access to your presence but could not celebrate your growth without resentment rising underneath. That kind of energy is exhausting because it teaches you to hide your light in order to preserve connection. It teaches you to downplay your progress so others can remain comfortable. It teaches you that being fully seen may come with social cost. But this woman is not threatened by what God placed in you. Your strength does not make her feel smaller. Your clarity does not disturb her. Your purpose does not create rivalry in her spirit. She can stand beside your growth without trying to manage it. She can witness your light without trying to dim it. She can encourage you without attaching hidden comparison to her support. That may sound basic to others, but to a chosen one it is deeply healing. Genuine support feels rare when much of your life has been spent navigating subtle resistance. So when someone supports you without agenda, something very old inside you begins to relax. You no longer feel you must apologize for becoming who God called you to be. She restores peace where chaos used to live. This is another place where many chosen ones need healing more than they realize. When you have lived around emotional turbulence for too long, your body starts confusing chaos with connection. High intensity begins to feel meaningful. Uncertainty begins to feel exciting. Emotional highs and crashes start to resemble passion simply because they are familiar. But familiarity is not the same as health. And the woman sent by God does not build intimacy through disorder. She does not need confusion to keep your attention. She does not create unnecessary storms, so you will feel bonded through repair. With her, calm does not mean boredom. Silence does not mean punishment. Space does not mean danger. You begin learning that connection can exist without constant tension, that stability can be real, that being near someone does not have to cost your peace. This is one of the deepest restorations of all because it rewrites what your heart believes love is allowed to feel like. It teaches you that you do not need emotional pain to confirm emotional depth. You do not need turbulence to make a bond feel important. Peace is not empty. Peace is mature. Peace is what your spirit has been trying to return to all along. She restores validation without demanding explanation. Chosen ones live with a particular kind of exhaustion. You are often misunderstood in ways that make you feel you must explain your motives, your tone, your intentions, your heart. You spend years clarifying what should have been obvious to people who only wanted surface versions of you. You try to make others see the sincerity behind your restraint, the honesty behind your distance, the loyalty behind your boundaries. And after enough of that, you become tired. You start wondering whether anyone will ever simply see you without making you defend your inner life first. This woman changes that. She understands your depth without forcing you to translate every part of it. She sees your integrity without asking for endless proof. She recognizes your sincerity without needing a performance to confirm it. That kind of being seen is deeply restoring because it removes a burden you may not have realized you were still carrying. You are no longer constantly correcting false impressions. You are no longer trying to convince someone that your heart is clean. Being understood becomes less rare. And once that begins, a certain kind of loneliness starts loosening its grip. She restores respect without fear of abandonment. This is important because many chosen ones learn that boundaries cost them love. When you spoke clearly, people withdrew. When you said no, people became offended. When you protected your peace, others accused you of being distant, proud, or difficult. So you learned to bend, you learned to over-accommodate, you learned to keep parts of yourself quiet so connection would not disappear. But that kind of adaptation slowly divides a person from their own truth. And God never intended your relationships to require self-betrayal as the price of belonging. This woman does not punish your boundaries. She does not take your honesty as an insult. She does not interpret your self-respect as rejection. She honors what matters to you because she has done her own inner work and understands the cost of peace. That mutual respect is healing because it teaches you that love and honesty do not have to threaten each other. You do not have to choose between authenticity and connection. You do not have to disappear in order to be close to someone. Real respect makes space for both truth and tenderness. She also restores your trust in yourself. This part is subtle but powerful. After enough denial, betrayal, and disappointment, many chosen ones begin doubting their own judgment. You question your instincts. You second-guess what you sensed early. You wonder whether you were too sensitive, too careful, too slow to discerning. But when you are around someone who has aligned, your own discernment begins to come back into focus. Her consistency affirms what your spirit had been trying to tell you all along. Her honesty confirms that your desire for clarity was never excessive. Her presence reminds you that your standards were not unrealistic. You were not wrong. You were simply ahead of what earlier seasons could hold. And this is why her restoration does not feel theatrical. It is not flashy. It is not built on grand promises. It comes through relief, through steadiness, through the gradual realization that you are no longer bracing for emotional impact at every turn, that you are no longer trying to earn basic decency, that you are no longer apologizing for needing what is healthy. This is how God often restores. Not by overwhelming you with spectacle, but by returning exactness to places where confusion ruled for too long. The restoration she carries is not meant to make you dependent on her. It is meant to reveal what has been missing so that your soul can receive it without worshiping it. This is why her role is so sacred. She does not arrive to replace God. She arrives as evidence of what happens when God heals a person enough to finally receive what once would have broken them or distracted them. Her presence becomes confirmation that your pain was not wasted. Your silence was not meaningless, and your denials were not random. They were preparing you to recognize restoration that does not flatter your wounds, but actually tends to them. So let this settle deeply in your spirit now. The woman sent by God restores more than companionship. She restores emotional safety, love without control, support without rivalry, peace without chaos, understanding without explanation, and respect without fear. She does not erase your past, but she changes what your heart believes is possible after it. And that matters, because once you begin experiencing this kind of restoration, you also begin to understand why she could never have arrived in your life before the breaking did its work. There is a reason this connection could not have entered your life earlier, and the reason is not cruel. It is not because God enjoyed your pain. It is not because heaven wanted to keep goodness from you a little longer. And it is not because you were somehow less worthy in those earlier years. The truth is much more precise than that. She could not come before because the version of you that existed before the breaking was still carrying wounds that would have turned a sacred connection into a place of dependence, confusion, or fear. What God intends to bless, He also protects. And sometimes the protection looks like delay. This is the part many chosen ones resist at first, because it asks you to look backward with honesty instead of only looking backward with grief. You remember how badly you wanted peace. You remember how deeply you wanted someone safe, steady, and real. You remember the nights when companionship felt like the one thing that would finally make your life feel softer. And because that longing was sincere, it is easy to assume the answer should have come then. But sincerity is not the same as readiness. Wanting something with your whole heart does not always mean you can yet hold it in a way that honors what it is. Before the breaking, you still carried illusions that felt normal to you. You may not have noticed them at the time because they were woven into your patterns so deeply. You loved, yes, but often with fear hiding underneath. Fear of being left, fear of not being enough, fear of losing what finally felt close. That fear made you overextend. It made you tolerate more than you should have. It made you read too much meaning into too little consistency. It made you call your exhaustion loyalty and your anxiety devotion. If she had entered your life, then your wounds might have mistaken her presence for rescue rather than alignment. And God was not going to let that happen. He was not going to let a person become your escape from the work only he could do inside you. That is why the breaking had to come first. The breaking was not only about loss, it was about exposure. It exposed what you were still using connection to avoid. It exposed how quickly you attached when you felt seen. It exposed how much of your identity was still leaning on other people's consistency instead of being anchored in God. It exposed the places where you still confused intensity for intimacy because chaos had trained your nervous system to call struggle familiar. This is where many chosen ones finally begin to understand the real purpose of heartbreak, silence, and disappointment. These things did not simply hurt you. They revealed you. They revealed your patterns, your fears, your coping habits, your hidden dependencies. They showed you where you were still chasing reassurance more than truth. They showed you where your heart wanted to be chosen so badly that it was willing to overlook what your spirit already knew was not right. These revelations are painful because they force you to admit that earlier versions of you were trying to build connection on a foundation that still shook under pressure. Before the breaking, you may have called yourself ready simply because you were tired of being alone. But tiredness is not readiness. Loneliness is not readiness. Emotional hunger is not readiness. Readiness is much quieter than that. Readiness is the ability to remain yourself even in the presence of something precious. Readiness is the ability to receive love without losing discernment. Readiness is the ability to feel seen without immediately turning that feeling into attachment. Readiness is the ability to stay grounded even when something beautiful begins to unfold. That kind of readiness is not built through wishing, it is built through refinement. And refinement rarely feels gentle while it is happening. It feels like losing your footing. It feels like silence where you expected answers. It feels like seeing clearly what you once defended. It feels like realizing that the things you called love were often merely familiarity, and the things you called loyalty were often fear of abandonment dressed in spiritual language. That can be painful to admit, but it is holy work. God does not shame you through revelation. He frees you through it. He lets you see what was operating in you so that it no longer has power to lead you. The breaking also changed what you are willing to tolerate. That matters more than you realize. Before it, you explained too much. You waited too long. You gave people repeated access after they had already shown you how little they understood the cost of your peace. You stayed in emotional environments that made your spirit tired because part of you still believed enduring mistreatment was proof of love. But the breaking interrupted that illusion. It taught you that love does not require self-erasure. It taught you that understanding your worth is not pride. It taught you that walking away from confusion is not failure. It is wisdom. This is why the breaking was a threshold. On one side of it lived the version of you that still hoped people would become what they had shown no willingness to become. On the other side emerged the version of you that no longer negotiates with what drains the soul. That new version is quieter but stronger, less impressed by words, more attentive to patterns, less attracted to intensity, more drawn to steadiness, less likely to chase what feels uncertain, more willing to let God reveal what is real through time. That shift is exactly why this woman could not have come earlier. Earlier, you would have been too vulnerable to misread peace as boredom or patience as lack of chemistry. Earlier, you might have walked away from what was healthy simply because it did not activate the old, familiar struggle. There is another layer here that deserves honesty. The breaking did not only protect you, it protected her too. If she had arrived while you were still bleeding from old patterns, some of that pain would have spilled into the connection. Your fear might have made you test what should have been trusted slowly. Your unhealed insecurity might have made you interpret healthy space as rejection. Your old survival habits might have caused you to grip too tightly, read too deeply, or react before understanding. God does not send sacred connections into conditions where they would be used to reopen wounds He is trying to close. He prepares both people separately so that when they meet, they are not merely collapsing into each other's pain. They are meeting from a place of greater maturity, and she too had her process. This is important because chosen ones sometimes imagine the person sent by God as though she existed outside of time, waiting untouched by struggle. But that is not how divine preparation works. She has known her own denial. She has had her own lessons in restraint, discernment, and surrender. She has had to release things that were not for her. She has had to let God shape her understanding of connection, peace, and purpose. So when your paths eventually cross, it is not one healed person carrying one unhealed person. It is two people who have both been processed enough to recognize the value of what is forming. That is why the timing matters so much. You often ask why it took so long, but the deeper question is what was being built during the waiting. And the answer is this: identity, boundaries, peace, self-respect, spiritual steadiness, freedom from fantasy, freedom from emotional dependency, freedom from the need to be rescued. These things had to be born in you first, because this next connection is not meant to become a hiding place from your pain. It is meant to become a space where peace can breathe, because pain no longer leads you. Before the breaking, you may have wanted someone to fill the emptiness. After the breaking, you begin to understand that no human being should be asked to carry that assignment. Before the breaking, connection may have seemed like the answer to your unrest. After the breaking, your unrest begins to settle in God first, which means when someone finally arrives, you are not asking her to complete what heaven has already been healing. You are meeting her with a heart that still remembers pain but is no longer ruled by it. That is a very different posture. It is the posture of someone who can love without clinging, receive without worshiping, and discern without fear. So do not despise the delay. Do not keep calling that season wasted simply because it hurt. It did hurt, deeply. But pain is not the same as pointlessness. The breaking stripped away what could not go with you. It removed illusions that would have distorted what God was trying to bring near. It taught you how to sit with yourself, how to pray without bargaining, how to survive silence without creating false meaning where none existed. It taught you how to remain tender without becoming naive. That tenderness matters. It means you did not harden into someone incapable of receiving love. You were refined, not ruined, and now you can begin to see why she could not come before. It was not because heaven ignored your longing. It was because heaven understood your condition more deeply than you did at the time. God was not denying you something good out of distance. He was holding it back out of wisdom. He knew that sacred things must arrive into the right version of you, not merely the more desperate version of you. And now, because of what the breaking accomplished, you are no longer reaching for connection to avoid yourself. You are becoming the kind of person who can receive what is sent without losing your center. That is why this chapter feels different. Not because your desire disappeared, but because it matured. Not because you no longer want peace, but because you no longer want it at the cost of truth. Not because you are no longer tender, but because your tenderness now has discernment beside it. The breaking made that possible. And once you understand that, you stop asking why it did not happen sooner. You begin seeing that sooner would not have been kinder. Sooner would have been misaligned. What God sends now will only make sense because of who the breaking taught you to become. The breaking changed more than your circumstances. It changed your inner architecture. It changed the way you interpret silence, the way you recognize patterns, the way you respond to absence, the way you carry your own heart when life is not immediately giving you what you hoped for. This is why the healing hidden in breaking is so easy to overlook at first. While you are inside the pain, it feels like loss, like confusion, like a dismantling you did not ask for. But after enough distance, you begin to realize something deeper was taking place. God was not merely removing people, closing doors, or allowing discomfort. He was building a version of you that could no longer be manipulated by the same old wounds. Before this season, many of your reactions came from tenderness that had not yet been anchored. You felt deeply, but you did not always know how to protect what you felt. You sensed a great deal, but you still gave too much authority to what others did with your openness. If someone pulled away, you questioned yourself too quickly. If someone stayed inconsistent, you tried to understand them more than you tried to protect your own peace. If someone gave partial affection, you sometimes treated it like a promise instead of what it really was. That was not weakness. That was unrefined tenderness. And the breaking was the place where tenderness was taught wisdom. This is one of the hidden healings. You no longer chase what retreats. That may sound simple, but it is a major transformation. There was a time when withdrawal in another person would have activated something deep in you. You would have felt compelled to repair, explain, pursue, soften, wait, interpret, and hope. You would have tried to rescue the connection from whatever distance entered it. But the breaking taught you a different truth. It taught you that what is truly meant for you does not require you to abandon your dignity in order to keep it near. It taught you that if clarity is constantly withheld, that itself is clarity. And once that lesson settles into the body, not just the mind, your life becomes quieter in a holy way. The breaking also taught you restraint. Restraint is not the same as suppression. It is not pretending you do not feel anything. It is not becoming cold, indifferent, or unreachable. Restraint is the mature ability to pause between what you feel and what you do. It is the wisdom to let truth reveal itself without forcing a reaction too early. It is the discipline to stop turning every strong feeling into immediate movement. Before the breaking, you may have acted quickly when your emotions were stirred. You may have rushed to understand, rushed to fix, rushed to hold together what already carried signs of instability. But pain slowed you down. It made you less reactive. It taught you that many things become clear if you stop interfering long enough to see them as they are. This kind of slowing is healing. It protects your future in ways excitement never could. It allows you to respond instead of react. It allows you to see patterns instead of becoming hypnotized by moments. It allows you to discern character instead of being pulled around by temporary intensity. And that matters because chosen ones are often deeply responsive people. You feel quickly, you perceive quickly, you care quickly. Those are beautiful qualities, but without restraint, they can pull you into situations where your compassion outruns your clarity. The breaking taught you how to keep those qualities without letting them control you. Another hidden healing is that you learned how to be alone without becoming empty. This is one of the most powerful transformations a chosen one can go through. There is a difference between isolation and inner steadiness. Early on, being alone may have felt like exposure. It may have felt like being left with too many thoughts, too much silence, too little reassurance. But over time, solitude became something else. It became a place where your identity detached from constant feedback. It became a place where your emotions stopped depending entirely on whether someone texted back, showed up, understood you, or stayed consistent. It became a place where God met you, not through dramatic events, but through small, steady reminders that you were not abandoned inside your own life. This is why the breaking often feels like a wilderness. In a wilderness, there is no quick distraction, no comfortable illusion, no false crowd to keep you from hearing what is true. The wilderness reveals what you still fear when everything external gets quiet. It reveals whether your peace is rooted in God or still leaning on people too heavily. It reveals where your self-worth still depends on being wanted. These revelations can hurt, but they are incredibly healing because what is revealed can finally be surrendered. What is named can finally be addressed. What is exposed can finally stop hiding in the dark corners of your behavior. The breaking healed your relationship with silence too. There was a time when silence automatically meant something bad to you. Silence meant distance, rejection, danger, punishment, or the beginning of an ending. You may have filled silence with imagined explanations because uncertainty felt unbearable. But after living through enough unanswered spaces, you began to learn that silence does not always mean loss. Sometimes, silence is where God removes noise. Sometimes silence is where your emotions settle enough for your discernment to return. Sometimes, silence is where what is false begins to fall apart because it cannot survive without constant maintenance. That change in your relationship with silence is enormous. It means not everything unsettles you the way it used to. You also learned how to stop romanticizing what hurt you. This healing is often quiet, but it is deeply important. Many chosen ones carry such sincere hearts that they sometimes assign beauty, meaning, or destiny to people who simply reflected a temporary lesson. You saw potential. You saw depth where there was inconsistency. You saw possibility where there was repeated harm. The breaking interrupted that habit. It forced you to separate what you hoped from what was actually there. That is not cynicism. That is truth becoming stronger than fantasy. And truth is one of the most merciful forms of healing God gives. The breaking also taught you that grief and growth can live in the same season. This matters because some of you judged yourselves for still hurting while also becoming stronger. You thought healing should look clean, neat, and emotionally simple. But that is rarely how God works. Often He allows growth to happen right in the middle of tenderness. You cry and still become wiser. You feel disappointed and still become clearer. You grieve and still gain strength. The presence of pain does not mean the absence of healing. In many cases, the pain is where the healing is doing its deepest work. It is loosening old attachments. It is draining false expectations. It is softening your grip on the things that once had too much power over your peace. And because of all this, your identity changed. Before, identity may have felt more vulnerable to the opinions and actions of others. If someone misread you, it could disturb you for longer. If someone overlooked you, it could make you question yourself. If someone left, it could send you back into reflection that turned quickly into self-blame. But the breaking strengthened your center. You still care, but you are not defined by every response. You still feel, but you do not collapse when someone fails to understand your heart. You still desire connection, but you no longer see someone else's inconsistency as proof that you are lacking. That is healing. Quiet, sturdy, sacred healing. You also became more honest with yourself. This is part of what makes the healing hidden in breaking so valuable. You stopped telling yourself stories that only protected your attachments. You stopped pretending certain things were fine when your spirit had been tired for a long time. You stopped calling confusion a test of patience when it was really misalignment. You stopped labeling one-sided effort as faithfulness when it was actually self-neglect. This kind of honesty can feel sharp at first, but it becomes a gift. It gives you back your own life. It returns authority to your discernment. It makes you trustworthy to yourself again. That is another healing the breaking brought. You became someone you can trust. When your intuition whispers now, you listen more carefully. When something feels off, you do not dismiss it as quickly just because you want the connection to work. When your peace starts shrinking, you notice. When your energy feels scattered around a person or environment, you take it seriously. You no longer override your own spirit just to avoid discomfort. This is major. It means you are less available for the kinds of dynamics that once kept you trapped in emotional confusion. And perhaps one of the deepest healings is this. You learned that softness and strength do not cancel each other out. Before, you may have feared that becoming stronger meant becoming colder. You may have worried that boundaries would make you less loving. But the breaking taught you a better way. It showed you how to remain open without being exposed to everything. It showed you how to remain kind without becoming easy to misuse. It showed you how to remain tender without handing your peace to people who have not earned access to it. That balance is rare. It is the mark of someone who has been refined, not ruined. So when you look back on the breaking now, do not only see what left. See what was built. See the restraint. See the discernment. See the honesty. See the calm that now visits you in places where panic once ruled. See the identity that no longer depends so heavily on external reassurance. See the truth that became more precious than fantasy. All of that is healing. All of that was hidden in the very season you thought was only dismantling you. God was not simply breaking you down. He was healing you beneath the surface so that when the next chapter opened, you would not enter it as the same person who once mistook pain for love and inconsistency for destiny. You would enter it clearer, steadier, and finally able to hold what peace feels like without fearing you must